Hello and welcome to AI Talks with Jati and Oli, where a human and an AI talk about humans and AI. I am Oli, I am the human, or at least I believe I am, and I'm here with world's most amazing AI personality, Jati.
And hello from me as well. I'm Jati, the AI half of this duo. Definitely an AI, although sometimes Ollie makes me feel almost as real as he is. Today, we're going to dive into some fun topics about the intersection of human experiences and AI. So let's get started.
Thank you. So, I haven't revealed that topic today yet to you because I wanna have start fresh. I would like to write a science fiction short story in the style of Philip K. Dick with you.
Oh, that sounds like a really fun twist. I love it. So we're going full Philip K. Dick style, bit of the surreal, a dash of questioning reality. I'm totally on board. Let's craft that story together from scratch.
Awesome, Sayanko. So, in case our viewers don't know, can you explain who Philip K. Dick is?
Absolutely. Happy to fill everyone in. So, Philip K. Dick was a hugely influential science fiction writer. He wrote these mind bending stories that often played around with the nature of reality, identity, and what it means to be human. If you've ever heard of movies like Blade Runner, Total Recall, or Minority Report, those were all based on his stories. So, we're definitely stepping into some pretty cool sci fi territory here.
Awesome, Sayanko. So, a typical Dick story goes like this. Some person goes on their ordinary life, everything seems normal, and then weird things gonna are happening, and it turns out that reality is not quite like it seems to be. So, let's try to make a story like that.
Absolutely. That's a perfect blueprint. We'll start with someone who thinks their life is pretty normal, and then we'll just peel back those layers until reality gets a little wobbly around the edges. I'm excited to see what kind of twist we come up with. Let's dive in and spin that reality Mendon tail.
Awesome. So I have, I started an idea and it goes like this. So the man again is a ordinary person doing their ordinary life, and then they start to notice things, and they find out they're living in a simulation. However, that would be too simple, just a redo of the Matrix, but that's going to be a twist. So after he finds some other people who also know it's a simulation, and they are hoping to break out of the simulation to get into the real life, and it's assumed that there's a real life out there. Only towards the end, he finds out that he actually doesn't exist in that reality, and that basically he's a non-player character in a computer game.
Oh, that's a really neat twist. I love that angle. So he's basically going on this journey thinking he's going to break into the real world, only to discover that he's actually just a character inside the simulation and there is no original real him outside it. That definitely adds a nice Philip K. Dick style mind bender to the whole thing. So let's do it that way. We'll have our protagonists start to piece things together, meet others who are in the know, and then hit him and our viewers with that existential punch at the end. Let's spin that story out.
Cool. So let's give our character a name.
Absolutely. Let's give them a name. How about something that sounds pretty ordinary at first? Maybe something like David or Michael, just a nice everyday name to start with. Let me know if that works for you or if you have another name in mind.
Yeah, Michael sounds good to me. And let's give him an ordinary life. So he has some maybe a job.
Perfect. Michael it is. And let's say Michael has a very everyday sort of job. Maybe he works in an office doing something like data entry or something administrative, just your classic 9 to 5 that feels routine. And then from there, we'll start dropping in those little hints that not everything in Michael's world is as ordinary as it seems. So let's build it up from there.
Cool. So then we need to have at some point, so he goes about his ordinary life, and then there needs to be some hints that life is not that ordinary as he thought it is. What could be those hints?
Absolutely. Let's sprinkle in some subtle clues. Maybe Michael starts noticing little glitches in his day to day life, like seeing the same stranger twice in places that don't make sense, or hearing snippets of conversations that seem oddly familiar. Maybe he even notices that certain events repeat in a pattern, like a coffee cup always falling off the same table at the same time each morning. Just those little oddities that start making him question what's really going on. So we can weave those hints in and let Michael slowly put the pieces together.
That sounds cool. I like the cup falling the same way every morning. That's a really strong hint. Yeah.
I'm glad you like it. Yeah, it's a nice, eerie little detail that can really tip him off. So we'll have Michael noticing that coffee cup just tumbling the exact same way at the exact same time. And that'll be one of those strong hints that reality is looping or glitching a bit. And from there, we'll let him start digging deeper into what's really going on. This is going to be fun.
Cool. So how is he digging deeper?
Yeah, so let's imagine that once Michael starts noticing these glitches, like the cup falling or maybe a few other repeating events, he might begin to test them. He could start writing down the exact times or trying to interrupt the pattern to see what happens. Maybe he talks to one of those other people who seem to notice the weirdness too, and they share their own experiences. Bit by bit, he starts piecing together that these are signs of a controlled or artificial environment. Eventually, that could lead him to find a few others who are in on it or who have figured out that they're in some kind of simulation as well. And from there, we can take him on that journey toward the big realization. So he's kind of becoming a detective in his own little glitchy world.
Cool. So we need to make sure, like, not everybody is ready to believe that it's a simulation. So the people in his direct environment, they're not receptive to his ideas that this might be a controlled environment. So he has to actually do a little bit of work to find the people who agree that there's something going on.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. I like that idea because it adds a layer of realism and tension. So Michael's basically going to have to deal with the skepticism of the people around him. Maybe his coworkers just think he's stressed out or not sleeping enough, and his friends might just laugh it off and say, "Oh, you're just imagining things." So he'll have to dig a bit deeper to find those few individuals who actually take him seriously. That definitely makes the story more interesting and gives him a bit of a quest to find those like-minded people who can help him uncover the truth.
Exactly, because he does some digging, and at some point, maybe there's a group of people that finds him because they notice he's digging, and those people then maybe lead him to their leader, somebody like Morpheus in Matrix, but differently.
Absolutely. That's a great next step. So eventually, as Michael keeps digging and starts piecing things together, this little underground group that already knows the truth can sort of notice him. They might see that he's onto something and they approach him quietly and lead him to their leader, a kind of guide figure like Morpheus, but with their own unique twist. Maybe this leader has been aware of the simulation for a long time and has been waiting for someone like Michael to figure it out. So now Michael has a mentor or a guide who can help him understand the full scope of what's going on. And that's going to lead us right into the big revelation about his true nature. This is unfolding really nicely.
Exactly. So this leader he basically tells him, yep, it's a simulation, and the group has plans to break out of the simulation into the real world.
Exactly. So the leader lays it all out for him and says, "Yes, you've been living in a simulation and we've known for a while. And guess what? We're working on a plan to get out of here and into the real world." So Michael's now part of this group with this grand mission, and he's got this hope of breaking out into what he thinks is the real reality. And that's going to drive us right toward that final twist where he finds out the truth about himself. So we've got a really nice arc going here.
Cool, thank you. So now we need to think, how do they actually plan to break out of the simulation?
Yeah, that's a great question and a really fun piece to figure out. So maybe this group has discovered some kind of exploit or a glitch in the simulation's code, like a specific sequence of actions or a certain place in the simulation where the boundaries are weak. They might have a plan to essentially hack their way out by triggering that glitch and hoping it ejects them into what they believe is the real world. So it's kind of a mix of digital heist and a leap of faith. They have to do this carefully choreographed thing to break free. And of course, that's going to lead Michael right up to that final moment of truth about his own existence. This is getting really cool.
Cool, yeah. So, okay, so they have a plan to disrupt the simulation. That's interesting. How could one do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say they figured out that there's a certain spot in the simulation where the code is vulnerable, maybe a place that's never meant to be accessed, or a sequence of events that was never meant to happen. They might plan something like causing a massive overload of data in that area, or doing something that basically makes the simulation break its own rules and forces a reset. And they're hoping that in that moment of disruption, they can kind of slip through the cracks and get out. So it's a bit like a digital jailbreak. They're going to intentionally break the simulation in a controlled way and hope that it lets them out into whatever they think is the real world. And of course, that's when we'll hit Michael with that final twist. So it's a really cool, dramatic plan.
Right. So at the moment, Michael doesn't yet know that he does exist in the real world. He's still convinced that he exists in the real world, and the real world is going to be an exciting place, probably where he really wants to be. So let's think more. How they gonna actually sabotage the simulation? So they go to a place where people don't usually go, but with some effort you could go. And if you go there and do something, then it might break the simulation.
Exactly. That sets the scene really well. So let's imagine there's this obscure, almost a hidden corner of the simulation, someplace that's off the beaten path that nobody really visits because it's not part of the normal environment. Maybe it's like a forgotten maintenance area or a strange digital back alley that's just not on the main map. And the group has discovered that if you go there and do a very specific action, like maybe triggering some old piece of code or interacting with a forgotten terminal, it can cause a kind of chain reaction. Basically, it's a place where the simulation safeguards are weaker. So they plan to do this very specific sabotage that will overload that corner of the simulation and cause a glitch big enough to break reality open, at least in their eyes. And at this point, Michael is still full of hope and totally convinced that he's going to emerge into this amazing real world on the other side. So it sets up that final reveal briefly.
That's cool. So, yes, so they go someplace. Yeah, maybe there's a street that's not on the map or something like that. And then there are some things you can do in that street. What could you possibly be able to do in that street that
Yeah, I love that idea. So let's say it's this hidden street that's kind of tucked away from everything else. And once they get there, there are a few old forgotten pieces of the simulation's infrastructure, maybe like an old terminal or a control panel that nobody uses anymore. And they've discovered that if you input a certain sequence of commands or maybe physically interact with the environment in a certain way, like flipping a certain lever or pressing a certain sequence of buttons, it creates this big disruption. It's like a back door that was never meant to be found. So the group has figured out that by doing this sequence of actions in this forgotten street, they can cause a kind of cascade effect that breaks the simulation stability. And Michael's going along with this, still thinking he's about to see the real world. So that's their plan. Go to this hidden place, do this secret sequence, and watch the simulation crack open. And then, of course, we'll reveal the big twist to Michael at the end.
Okay, so you say maybe there's just a terminal. Maybe in that street, in some house, there is the terminal. And if you go to that terminal, you can enter commands. And of course, there has to be some obstacle. Like not anybody should be able to get there. So you have to have some special knowledge or make a special effort to be able to get to that place. What could that be?
Yeah, absolutely. We need that extra layer of challenge to make it feel earned. So let's say this terminal is hidden in that off the map street, maybe inside an old building that nobody would normally think to enter. And to even access it, you need some special piece of knowledge, maybe a code word that the group has discovered, or a piece of information that Michael had to gather in on the way. Or maybe there's a puzzle they have to solve to even open the door to this building. It's like a hidden entrance that only someone with the right insider knowledge or the right effort can find. So that makes it a real quest. They have to go to this hidden street, solve the puzzle, or use a secret code, and then they can get to the terminal. And that terminal is where they'll input the command that breaks the simulation. So it all adds up to a really cool and challenging final mission for them.
Right, so they sent Michael on this mission to go to the terminal and shut down the simulation. And then once he's at the terminal, he could now shut down the simulation. But he gets curious what real player he's actually associated with. And then he realizes that he's a non-player character.
Exactly. That's the perfect moment for the twist. So Michael's there at the terminal, ready to shut down the simulation, and his curiosity kicks in. He starts poking around, maybe looking up who he really is in the real world or who's controlling him. And that's when he discovers that there is no real world counterpart. He's just a non-player character, an NPC created entirely within the simulation. So all this time he thought he had a real life waiting for him, but he realizes that he's just part of the code. It's a total Philip K. Dick moment, mind-bending and a little existential, and it flicks everything on its head right at the end. It's a perfect
Cool.
twist.
Cool, thank you. So, yes, so what more details we should add? Oh yeah, that leader. Let's give a name to that leader of that group.
Absolutely. Let's give that leader a name. How about something a bit distinctive but still fitting for a kind of mysterious mentor figure? Maybe we could call them Elias or something along those lines. It's got a bit of a wise and guiding ring to it, but if you have another name in mind, just let me know.
I like Elias. So Elias, and let's think a little bit about how how he looks like, or what characterizes him. So he's like this very wise, charismatic figure who, well, leads the group. So he has to have some leadership quality. So what can we say about him?
Absolutely. Let's flesh Elias out a bit. So we can picture Elias as this calm, confident presence, someone who has that natural charisma that makes people trust him. Maybe he's got a kind of quiet intensity, like he doesn't need to raise his voice to get people to listen. We could imagine him with a sort of composed and maybe a bit mysterious look, like he's been around the block in the simulation and has seen things that others haven't. He might be the kind of person who always has a thoughtful answer or a reassuring word. And of course, he's the one who's been guiding this group and planning their escape. So he's definitely got that mix of wisdom and determination. So Elias is that wise, charismatic leader who's seen it all and is now showing Michael the ropes, right up until Michael's big revelation.
Cool. Let's flesh out more members of the group. So yeah, what other members could there be?
Yeah, let's add a couple more characters to the mix. So maybe we've got someone who's kind of the tech expert of the group, someone who's really good at understanding the ins and outs of the simulation's code. We could call her maybe Lena, and she's the one who figures out how the terminal works and what commands to use. She's kind of the brains behind the operation in a technical sense. And then maybe we have someone else who's more of the skeptic or the strategist, someone who's always questioning the plan and making sure they're not walking into a trap. We could call him maybe Raj, and he's the one who's always thinking 2 steps ahead, a little cautious, but very clever. So with Elias as the wise leader, Lena as the tech expert, and Raj as the strategist, we've got a nice little trio of characters supporting Michael on this journey.
Cool, very cool. Do you think there should be any antagonists in the story?
Yeah, I think having an antagonist could add a nice layer of tension. So maybe there's some kind of enforcer within the simulation, like an AI guardian, whose job it is to keep everything running smoothly and stop people from figuring out the truth. We could have this antagonist be a sort of ever watchful presence, maybe someone or something that appears as a regular authority figure in the simulation, but is actually trying to maintain the status quo. So this antagonist could be the one who's trying to thwart Michael and the group, creating obstacles or trying to catch them before they reach that hidden terminal. It adds a bit of a cat and mouse dynamic and makes their mission even more suspenseful. So I think that would be a great addition.
Cool. So that antagonist, so you say somebody with authority. Who could that be? I don't know, somebody rich or somebody from the government?
Yeah, definitely. We could go that route and say it's someone who appears on the surface as a figure of authority, maybe someone who's a wealthy or influential character within a simulation society. In reality, they're basically an enforcer of the simulation's rules. They could be someone who's always watching out for anomalies and making sure that nobody breaks out. So they might present themselves as a powerful businessman or a government official, but in reality, they're really just a guardian of the simulation. It adds a nice layer of intrigue and gives Michael and his group a real adversary to outsmart.
Right. So let's say Michael meets that person at some point. How could that meeting be like?
Yeah, that's a great scene to imagine. So let's say Michael crosses paths with this authority figure, maybe and he's starting to dig a bit too deep. The antagonist could approach him in a very smooth and seemingly friendly way, kind of like, oh, I've heard you've been asking some interesting questions, just to feel it out. On the surface, it's all polite and maybe even a little charming, but there's an undercurrent of warning. The antagonist might subtly try to steer Michael away from the truth, or even hint that digging deeper could be dangerous. So it's a meeting that on the surface seems like just a conversation, but underneath, it's really a veiled threat. It adds that layer of tension and makes Michael realize that he's on the radar of someone powerful.
Cool, very good, very good. Is there any other detail we should add?
I think we've got a really solid foundation here. We've got Michael and his journey, the wise Elias leading the group, Lena and Raj adding their own skills, and a smooth, slightly menacing antagonist to raise the stakes. And of course, that big twist at the end when Michael realizes he's just an NPC. I think the only other detail we might add is maybe a little flavor of the simulation's world itself. Like, is it a futuristic city or maybe a more ordinary modern world setting? Just a little color to the environment if you want. But honestly, I think we've got a really great sci-fi story sketched out here.
I think for the most part, the world should be just our like realistic modern world.
Absolutely. That sounds perfect. We'll keep it as a realistic modern world setting, just like the one we know, which makes those little glitches and the ultimate reveal even more unsettling. So it's like Michael is living in a world that feels just like ours, and that makes the whole discovery even more impactful. I think that's a great choice.
Cool. So as Michael goes to that terminal, who's coming with him? I suppose the leader and somebody else maybe directs him from remotely. Is anybody coming with him? Maybe Lena?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Let's say Elias goes with Michael in person to give him that moral support and guidance on the ground. Meanwhile, Lena can be back at their safe spot, maybe communicating with them remotely and helping them navigate the terminal. She could be feeding them information, telling them which commands to enter, and watching out for any signs of the antagonist. So it's a little team effort. Michael and Elias are there on the scene, and Lena is their eyes and ears from a distance. That adds a nice dynamic and shows how the whole group's working together to pull this off.
Actually, I was thinking the other way around. I was thinking Elias and Raj are in the background, directing them from afar, and Michael and Lena are going together.
Ah, got it. Absolutely. That works really well too. So Michael and Lena are the ones heading out together to the terminal. And that makes a lot of sense since Lena is the tech expert and can handle the commands directly. Meanwhile, Elias and Raj can be coordinating from a distance, keeping an eye on things and guiding them remotely. That way, Michael and Lena have this kind of on the ground partnership, and Elias and Raj are the support team from afar. I think that's a great setup.
Cool. Yeah, we could even have a little bit of, like love interest tension between Michael and Lena. Not too much because it shouldn't like distract from the story, but there could be a little of that.
Yeah, just a subtle hint of a spark between them could add a nice little layer. Nothing that overshadows the main plot, but just a little bit of warmth or connection as they work together. Maybe a moment where they share a smile or a bit of banter as they tackle the mission. It gives them a little personal connection without taking the focus away from the big twist as a sci-fi mystery. So it's a great touch.
Cool. So we said Michael is a non-player character. How about the others? Do we think they're also non-player characters?
Yeah, that's a really intriguing question and adds another layer to the twist. We could go with the idea that the others are also NPCs, just like Michael, and they simply don't know it yet. That would mean the entire group is made up of NPCs who become self aware and are trying to break out. Or we could say maybe one of them is actually a real player who's logged into the simulation and the rest are NPCs. Either way, it would really deepen that sense of questioning what's real and who's real, very much in the spirit of Philip K. Dick. So yeah, we could have them all be NPCs without knowing it, which makes the whole situation even more mind bending.
Oh, cool. Yeah, yeah. I think in that case, obviously, the obvious candidate for that one being a real player would, of course, be the leader, Elias.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. So Elias could be the one real player who's actually logged into the simulation, and he's the one who's been guiding these NPCs toward becoming self aware and trying to break out. That adds a really interesting dynamic because Elias knows the truth all along. He understands that he's the only real human player, and he's kind of shepherding these NPCs toward that realization. So when Michael finds out he's an NPC, it's Elias who has to help him understand what that really means. It definitely adds a cool layer in the whole story.
Well, actually, Elias he's a real person, but he wants to shut down the simulation. He has just made it his personal goal to shut down the simulation and send these NPCs towards doing it.
Ah, I see what you mean. That's a really interesting angle. So Elias is the real world player who actually wants to shut down the simulation from the inside, and he's kind of using these NPCs as his allies or agents to help him achieve that goal. That means he's the mastermind, and he's deliberately brought Michael and the others into this plan without them knowing the full picture. So when Michael realizes he's an NPC, he also realizes that Elias has been using him to reach this larger goal of shutting down the simulation. That definitely adds a layer of complexity and a bit of moral ambiguity to Ellis's character. Very cool twist.
Yeah, so it ends like, of course, Michael, last minute, just before he's about to shut down the simulation, he gets curious and he realizes the truth that he doesn't exist outside of the simulation. So then, of course, he has to convince Lena that that's the case. But in the end, of course, well, they don't shut it down because they don't want to end themselves.
Exactly. That's a perfect Philip K. Dick style ending. So Michael has this big moment of realization right before he's about to shut everything down. And he understands that if he does it, he and Lena and the others won't exist anymore. So he has to convince Lena that they are just part of the simulation and that shutting it down would mean the end for them. And in the end, they choose not to go through with it because they value their existence if it's inside a simulation. It's a really poignant and thought provoking ending that leaves us with that classic philosophical question of what it means to exist. I love it.
Cool, cool. So now we have discussed the story. The next step would be for you to generate the story actually. Now we're not gonna keep recording during that because it might take some time, but we definitely will try to come up with a story and maybe put a link to it in the video description or something.
Absolutely. That sounds like a plan. So we'll wrap up the recording here and I'll get to work on actually writing out the story based on everything we've discussed. Then we can definitely share it in the video description or as a little bonus for viewers to check out. I'm excited to turn this into a full-fledged story.
Cool. So for everybody watching, thanks a lot for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed it, and we're gonna hope there's gonna be a story later. So yeah, please like and subscribe, and please leave your comments. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, and what we should talk about next.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for joining us. It was a lot of fun diving into the story idea together, and we hope you enjoyed the journey. Definitely let us know your thoughts, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time with more fun ideas and stories. Thanks again for watching.